Thank you so much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome to all of you to the Fortune India 40 Under 40 Awards, where we honor India's brightest young business leaders. The sustained growth of the Indian economy has thrown up great new opportunities for business leaders, and they have taken up the challenge to create new economic ecosystems. Many of those are being felicitated today among a diverse set of awardees later this evening. Among them are those that spotted a gap in the market and built a flourishing business around it. There are also Gen Next leaders from legacy businesses who have reshaped their decades-old businesses with a new eye. Among the winners today is a law firm partner, legacy business transformers, a drone company founder, green energy promoters, a sustainable luxury founder, a fast-growing educational institution, among other distinguished business leaders. The evening ahead is an interesting one with two panel discussions, a fireside chat, followed by the award ceremony with one of India's most iconic business leaders, Mr. K.V. Kamath. Just to give you a brief backdrop of Fortune India's 40 Under 40 franchise, this is the 9th edition of the listing where we identify young achievers who made a mark over the past year in business and economy. For this year's listing, the achievers needed to be around 40 years of age, under 40 years of age as on 31st of March 2024. Fortune India kick-started the process by asking our team of journalists, HR heads, and senior professionals across industries to recommend names of people who made an impact over the past year. We also invited nominations via Fortune India's social media handles. The candidates were required to provide exhaustive information, including details of how they have been disruptors, how the business scaled up in the last year, how the company's offering is different from others, and any decisions taken by them that helped the organization. An independent jury identified the winners based on quantitative information provided by the nominees and qualitative inputs. In fact, two of our jury members will be here amongst us later today. We do believe this evening will be worth your time spent. Any feedback and suggestions are most welcome. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Rajiv. And there's a request to everyone here. We are all going to be very excited and encouraging for all those who come and take their trophies back. So please clap hard, hoot hard, cheer all of those who take accolades back today. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a set of young Indians who are setting up altogether new companies or are reinventing companies that are part of their family. And of course, we have first-timers with great ideas who are redefining the way we consume goods and services. We have seen so much of that change over the last few years. So what kind of challenges do these two sets of entrepreneurs face? How similar or different are their experiences? That is what we want to understand in our first panel discussion today. The topic is challenges of legacy next gen versus first timers. So ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome our esteemed speakers on stage. Please welcome Mr. Rishabh Shroff, partner Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas. I would request our speakers to please take a seat on the stage, starting from the far end of the stage to the left. So I request you to please, again, give a huge round of applause to Mr. Rishabh Shroff. Joining him on stage is Mr. Suraj Saharan, co-founder Delivery. A round of applause for Mr. Saharan. Please welcome on stage Mr. Abhishek Chakraborty, CEO, DTDC Express. Like I said, keep the applause coming. Please welcome Mr. Pranav Kapoor, founder and creative director, P. Kapoor Fragrances. Please welcome Ankush Grover, co-founder, Rebel Foods. And moderating this discussion is Ajita Shashidhar, editor-at-large, Fortune India. Please give her a huge round of applause. She's the sole lady on stage who's going to handle all these men. Another huge round of applause for Ajita. I'm going to hand it over to Ajita, and someone's going to give her a mic so that she can settle down and pose some tough questions to these young men.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to Fortune India 40 Under 40 Awards. So as you all know, 40 Under 40 Awards is all about celebrating entrepreneurship celebrating some of the most dynamic entrepreneurs of India, Inc. So here we go, and a lot of the entrepreneurs who are part of our list not only run successful startups, but also we have a sparkling list of entrepreneurs who belong to legacy businesses. They are the new generation of legacy businesses. So we thought it is just great to have a discussion around the challenges of entrepreneurship for entrepreneurs who are not only running interesting startups, but are also part of legacy enterprises. So let's find out from them as to what kind of challenges and opportunities they see in this world of entrepreneurship. So thank you, all of you, for making it to the panel, and many of you have come from outside of Mumbai, so thank you so much for your time. So, Rishabh, I would like to start with you. So being the next generation of an old family-run business, I'm assuming must be a lot of responsibilities because you're inheriting a legacy. So, and you are part of a 109-year-old legal firm. So it'll be just, if you could take us through as to, you would have grown up in an era where running a bootstrap startup is kind of considered cool. So what really played in your mind when you decided to take up your family business? And, did you always know that you would take up this business, or was it, what really transpired is what we would like to know.
Thank you. Always a stress of starting first, I think, so guys, bear with me. It's a very apt question, and I'm very happy that my father also is here as we look at this. He completes 42 years running our firm today, to the very day. So I think we were just discussing as we were, chatting about this session that, what has 42 years also meant for you in terms of seeing how the business has evolved, and, some of the clients that, Dad used to work with, the generation change already has happened for those families, like Keshav, for example, he worked with your father, now working with you, and Shashwat, etc. So we ourselves as a family are seeing our clients also change in our business as well. So some of the conversations that we have about things like governance, about succession, working with professionals in the business, new industries, new economies, very different from what it was 42 years ago. And which is what I think really excites me. Some of the stuff that we are doing right now are sort of happening for the first time in India in terms of new practice areas, new businesses, new ventures. We've got so many exciting startups on a panel with new innovative business models. And I think that's what excites me about the kind of work I do. So in our own business, we're also working on reinventing ourselves every generation. So I would say in my grandfather's era, it was more about the practice of law. What Dad in his 42 years has done is make the business of law also very interesting, about running, a large, we're a 1,000-lawyer law firm now, running it like a business. And what I want to hopefully leave my legacy as is taking to the age of AI, sort of, robo-lawyers and, working with a chat GPT lawyer or whatever it may be. So every generation, I think, is reinventing what the practice of law and the business of law means. So to answer your question, I think that what excites me. And we think of ourselves as a professionally run family business. We have about 200 partners, out of which only 4 or 5 are family. So by definition, working a lot of external, talent in our business as well. So, and many have been in the firm 20, 30 years. So I think we're doing something and retaining our professionals in the business as well. So we can chat more as we go along. But thank you.
Thank you, Rishabh. Moving on to Pranav. Pranav, you are part of a eighth generation of a legacy business out of Kannauj. And you're into the business of making perfumes. And your family always was happy to be in the B2B business. And you are taking the legacy forward by entering the D2C segment and getting into perfume tourism, making India, Kannauj, the perfume destination of India. So it'll be interesting to hear from you as to what made you kind of get into this business. Were you really prepared to do this?
Growing up, I really wasn't. My family nobody ever pressured us to join the business. We've all been out because Kannauj is a small town, so everybody's been to boarding schools, everybody lived outside. So there was no pressure of any kind to, you need to take this forward. Which I think is great because if you're forced to do something, you may not value it as much. Coming back to the business was something that just organically happened with me. And when I did, the challenges obviously were where nobody knew me in Kannauj because I spent all my life outside. And most people in India only heard of Kannauj when 130 crores were found in cash. And that's what made the news. But so I think the first thing was the skepticism of the team that this guy who can barely like put together 3 words in Hindi or write it properly is going to come and tell us what to do. But yeah, I mean, I faced a little bit of brunt with that. But the whole point is that how do you take something that has been there for such a long time and bring it up to speed, A, in a tech-driven world, and B, how do you take it to a global stage for general consumers? The business people always knew about Kannauj because we had all the international companies coming down and, been exporting since the 50s. But Indians themselves didn't know about where Kannauj was. So that is what perfume tourism, that's why the whole thought for perfume tourism came, and to basically set up a D2C brand where now consumers could get part of the legacy that Kannauj, being the perfume capital that invented fragrance much before France could spell perfume. So that's what basically fueled
Your family okay with?
They were very happy to have me back. And yeah, I mean, they were pretty excited about it. And they're very easy, actually. Family is very easy. So the whole pressure and the challenge was me versus my brain, nothing external.
Thank you. So let me go to a startup founder now. Suraj, if I may ask you, how is it to start a business from scratch? You literally started on a blank slate. And, a little bit of reading up I did about you was like you first started it was a hyperlocal delivery business, and when hyperlocal was quite unheard of. And, you and your co-founder would deliver books, and that's where the idea came. So if you could tell us was it unnerving? What really was playing in your mind?
So I guess when we started, it wasn't really unnerving because there's an age when you're young, you're ready to take risks. You don't think so much about what's going to happen. But as you go into it and as you try to build it, you realize how difficult it is, and especially building a logistics business like ours, which is operationally extremely intensive, very, very people intensive. Trying to build a business like that, you feel like you tend to sort of keep thinking whether you took the right decision. But then, I think keep your head down, keep executing, things will fall in place. We started out as a food delivery company. So, what you see today as Zomato delivery was something that we started out with. Coincidentally, Dipinder and Pankaj from Zomato were good friends from where we worked before. So, in one of the casual conversations in their office, Sahil and I, we said, why don't we set up food delivery? Because that was a need. A lot of restaurants weren't delivering food. But we said we'll set it up independently. We won't do it as part of Zomato. We'll do it as an independent company. Started there, very quickly realized we had a lot of spare capacity in terms of bandwidth with the riders between lunch and dinner, because lunch and dinner are the busy hours for food. And this is when e-commerce was just taking off, 2011. So to fill that gap, we started doing e-commerce deliveries locally within Gurgaon. The feedback we got was very, very positive. The companies we worked with said, can you please expand this in other cities for us? Because at that point, COD was a concept unheard of. And it was the only driver for e-commerce at that point. People were not comfortable using credit cards or debit cards online. And so COD was the absolute holy grail of e-commerce. And so we realized that if e-commerce has to grow the way it is being bet on, a lot of people were investing behind Flipkart. There was a company called Let's Buy. There was a company called Urban Touch, Health Cart. These were some of the early companies that were seeing a lot of VC funding. And we said, look, if they have to grow, they need a logistics partner, which will be able to do COD, deliveries, and remit cash, and reconcile on a real-time basis. And so that's where we sort of changed track, and we said, let's shut this food thing for now. E-commerce is a more burning thing, and it needs a player. If we don't do it, somebody else will at some point. So that's how we sort of pivoted. We started doing e-commerce. And we've grown. I mean, what we thought has turned out to be true. Because we were there, a lot of the e-commerce companies have grown. You know, because there was a back end that they could ride on, e-commerce companies have become very, very large today, right? So it wasn't unnerving when we started, but there were moments of doubt along the journey. But I guess, again, you know, keep your head down, keep executing, things will fall in place.
Interesting. Ankush, coming to you. Again, your business was very novel at its time, ahead of its time. Were there times you kind of felt that it's kind of nothing is going to work out, and were there moments when you got those jitters? How was it?
So I think as you mentioned, you're very young and you see your batchmates every day coming back and saying, oh, I'm not doing anything good. You realize that you're at least up to something. I think in our journey, we pivoted a lot. And we know, so we were first time engineers, MBAs working on food. So a lot of technology we wanted to put. And the whole idea behind that no one has challenged this industry so far is the oldest industry in the world. So there is Amazon to Walmart and all that, but nothing in food. So I think we pivoted. We started with Fasos on High Street. Then we realized that people don't even know where our store is. So we started something called as dark kitchens, which were very new. In fact, when I went to open Delhi market, my parents said no one is going to order from a place which is not visible. So over the time we keep pivoting, we keep realizing, and the journey kept on changing. I think one time which was where we felt now we don't know what's going to happen. We were at 350 kitchens. We have 7,000 people on the field. Is when COVID happened and everything was shut. But I think that was the only time where we never knew what's going to happen, because we have perishable food. It's the whole people at risk. But other than that, I think it's been a fun journey. And still, there's a lot of 0 to 1 which keep happening. We keep launching brand. We got Wendy's to India. This is the first time Wendy's came partner with someone who's in cloud kitchen. And this is the fastest scale they could do ever in their history. So in 3 years, they've opened 150 locations. So I think the whole journey, the whole fun makes us keep going. Yeah.
Coming to you, Abhishek. I don't know whether I should really call you legacy, because DTDC is, I think, 34 years old, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, you're a second generation entrepreneur. You came from a professional background. You were with Accenture. So what made you come back, join your family business? Was it pressure, or you just wanted to?
Sometimes the best decisions people take when there is a lot of unfortunate things happening in the world. So I remember I was just fresh out of campus, spent about a year in the consulting space. And it was the era of the subprime crisis, India, and the whole world was in 2008, 2009, if you remember, was in a lot of turmoil, financially and otherwise. While I did not have any issues of my job being at risk, but there was something fundamental which triggered in my mind at that point. One, I was doing interesting work for which I was getting recognized, but the end result of that work is something that we as consultants don't, or people at that time, and still probably consultants don't get to see. You don't get to see the product. At the same time, of course, the business was there, and while there was absolutely no pressure from my father, our founder, to join the business, but when I looked at what we had been doing, and at a time when the company was possibly facing a lot of challenges, I thought, here is an opportunity where, if anything, we can only do better from here. It was rock bottom in some ways for Indian economy at that time, global economy as well. So I said, rather than being in a place where you might do interesting things but never get to see the end result of your work, you might as well work in a place where at least you can have a say in what happens, you can observe, you can learn, and ultimately, hopefully make impact. And if nothing else, it's friends and family, which means it's always going to be a lot of attention, love, care that you can find. And honestly, that was it. It was not something, and I never really thought whether I'll be 15 years down the line a CEO of the business, and I don't think my father ever said that you have to continue with it. It was just take one step after another. I think if you listen to all my colleagues over here, at all points in time in life, we've had challenges, but we always said just put the next foot after the other and let's see where it goes.
What was that one big challenge when you took over?
See, I think the challenge was that we were trying to distinguish ourselves. I mean, Suraj, my colleague from our industry, knows that our industry is a very fragmented industry and we've been around for a long time. When we started, we were a startup. It's just that startup was a bad word when my father started this company. Banks would not give you capital, let alone there was no VC culture, right? But the thing is, India was a very fragmented market in this space. And when I joined, I found that we were still one amongst many, rather than an organization that was really trying to step out and do something significant. So the big challenge that I worked along with my father, and I was lucky that I got that opportunity, was to create premiumization in our business. And that really allowed us to step away from the rest of the crowd. And, it's not that others' misfortune makes you happy, but just the fact that we're one of the only or the largest Indian origin multinational companies still present in this business means that we must have done something right in the last 15 years, which has allowed us to be where we are. So from that challenge to see where we are today, I think it's a whole journey that we have made. The whole industry has made it, but that time when we distinguished ourselves from the rest of the lot, I think was a critical point in the company and more so in my personal journey as an individual.
Rishabh, I want to come back to you when, ever since I've been writing stories on the startup ecosystem, one thing I learned that failure, it's cool to fail. And if you fail, you only learn, and then you correct and then you go ahead, correct your mistakes. Is it cool to fail in a legacy company?
Yeah, I definitely. Hello. Yeah, I definitely think so. If you just look at even legacy business or even just the kind of startup ecosystem now, I think now failure is cool. I mean, one of the good things we got from the West right now is how we tolerate failure. So over there, failure, you write Harvard case studies, you write books, you make Netflix series, etc. out of it. And here, failure is perceived to be criminal in India. The founder has done some malfeasance, there's something shady, investigate him, CBI, EOW, etc. I think that has reduced substantially in India right now. I think people understand businesses fail. It's not because the founder is a bad person or the founder has done something naughty. It's that some economics don't work sometimes. So including in legacy, family-run businesses right now, they're very tolerant of failure. So as a trend, one thing that we do end up seeing is large old businesses who have multiple verticals, multiple family members as well. They have like a family office, for example. They have a family fund, which in a way acts as a seed incubator for their businesses in that way. Lots of companies that we've seen today who are sort of become big in their industry initially started with the next gen doing something in their family office first. So we're seeing that trend play out, and the businesses fail. Okay, the family has lost some money, nobody's gone to jail, no bank is coming after you, no personal guarantee, etc. So I think that's a healthy trend we're seeing and encouraging entrepreneurship across the universe as well. Even today, a lot of businesses we see in legacy companies, like we have Ananya Birla coming in sometime. She's in microfinance first in the business. Aryaman is doing paints. Same thing is happening, Adani is doing defense when they were not doing something earlier. So that the business fails, it fails. But I think ultimately the tolerance is there for that journey.
How is it in your case, Pranav? Is there room to fail? Because again, you would have gone through the challenge of convincing your family that, I want to get into D2C, want to get into a consumer-facing business. So was there room to fail?
I think failure generally is really essential for anybody to grow. I mean, if you don't fall, how do you even learn? And in the D2C, I just feel there is a lot of constant failure. Something that the B2B doesn't have, because when you're in the B2B business, you have, let's just say you tasted blood. So where money comes first and, everything starts later. But in the D2C, you have a big hole in your pocket and you are constantly questioning yourself that why am I doing this? If the wheel is not broken, why am I trying to reinvent it? But then again, if you don't adapt, if you don't change, how does it sustain in the future, right? The industry basically when I entered was always supplying to tobacco, right? And in tobacco, there is a lot of cash, there's a lot of money, but there's no visibility. So how does this industry get to a global stage? Like how do you turn Kannauj perfumery and tell the world that, okay, this is superseding France. They are still buying stuff from us. We are the ones that are exporting to most of the fragrances that you're using, right? But Indians would always have this thing that, okay, no, if it's coming from France, if it's coming from there, that's legit. Not knowing where the raw materials and where the back end, what the back end story is. So it's essential. Failure is really, really essential. And but yeah, like learn fast. You don't have the option. I mean, I feel that you don't have the option to fail multiple times. Also because there is not just your failure at stake, it's what you're carrying with you, the legacy that you're carrying with you. So yeah, that's what I think.
Suraj, I would come to you now and want to understand a little bit about culture, importance of culture in a startup like yours. So if you look at a legacy company, they have decades of strong culture. They're rooted in culture, and in fact, they have a problem of breaking, changing mindsets there. In your case, how do you build that culture? How do you build an organization? So when you kind of came into this, did you ever think that you would kind of create a culture and build an organization which would stand the test of time?
So culture is extremely important. Culture is important so that the person who's farthest away from the founders or the core team knows what to do in situation of doubt. That's what culture is, right? We don't have a culture document even today. We don't have defined values anywhere. But I think culture is defined by what leaders do. And I think we've tried to always lead by example, and we've so far been successful. So, whether it's getting your own hands dirty, being there on the ground, literally every day, delivering shipments if need be, sorting parcels if required. I think we're always there, and that sets the tone of the organization. So whenever there is a need within operations for any kind of support, everybody is out there. Whenever new people join in, we make sure they first do a visit of the operations facilities, because that's what the business is all about. Even if you're in tech, you're building for operations. If you're in HR, you're hiring for operations. If you're in finance, you're making sure people in operations get the required money. So understanding operations is very critical. Doing it yourself to get that first-hand feel, I think, sets the tone. And so in the early days, we would scare people off saying, boss, 18 घंटे काम करना पड़ेगा. You won't be able to do it. And people will be like, नहीं करूँगा. They'd say, पैसे भी नहीं देंगे. नहीं, फिर भी करूँगा. So those are the people we ended up hiring. Some people dropped out because we did not want people to come in and treat this like any other job. Again, Abhishek just said that when his father started, startup was not cool. It wasn't cool even when we started, right? So it was some people really sort of wanted to come and be part of this mission with us. A lot of the early hires were actually within our network. So we were 5 founders. Each of us had our own friends. Some of the early hires were friends who knew that if one of us is there, we are doing the right thing, and they would spend time understanding it and say, I'm committing, I'm in. Obviously, in the long run, they've created wealth for themselves. We used ESOPs quite extensively. I think that's the other thing that I realized people don't use very effectively. I've spoken to a lot of startup founders where I tell them, कि ESOP do, मतलब share wealth. There's enough to be created for everybody. But give your key people a lot of stock options. Let them also make a lot of money in the long run. So people took bets, joined us, created the right environment, led by example. The culture automatically became what it is. And we've never had any issues so far. But as we move on, if we, at some point, as we start to move out of the active involvement in the company, we will have to create a culture document that defines what we stand for. But there are a bunch of people who imitate and live it every day. It's easy to create that document, right? So not a problematic area for us as such.
Ankush, when we were talking yesterday, one thing which stayed with me was you talked about you start a startup, you take it to a certain level, all that is fine, but the challenge comes when you scale it up to the next level. And that's when many organizations feel the need to hire a professional CEO. And so apart from hiring a professional CEO, what are the other things a startup like yours would look up to a legacy organization?
So I think one is when we started up, we never started up for 10 years or 20 years. I think we started building for at least 100 years. And I think as a founder, there's a time when you move from what to who. I think, so we know till the time we're building in the first like 10 years, now a lot of things are clear, what we're trying to build. Technology has helped us a lot. So now there are times when we think of, not at CEO level, maybe at other levels, that is it the right person? Is the right skill? And it's, I think as Suraj mentioned, it's more on hiring culture. So I think it's more about the org than the person. So it's not about the founder, it's about the company we have built. So there are times when you have to hire professional CEOs because you feel that's the right for the org. I think that's how we think. And so far, I think I'm able to run, so it's good. But when the times come, it's always will be about who and what's right for Rebel, not for me. Yeah.
Do you see yourself replacing you with a professional CEO?
Yeah, I think till whenever the time comes, but I think it's always about org first. So we have hired people to do better on supply chain. We have hired people to do better in marketing. So I think in our journey, we keep looking at. But I think, as Suraj mentioned, it's more about who's coming, does it fit in the culture or not? Not at designation, not at this. I think it's a vision which we are building, and someone who is aligned with the vision, he understands how the values it and the culture. Like, just to add to his culture point, so we have 350 kitchens. We don't call our kitchen managers manager, we call them chief delight officer. So that their job is to delight the customers. So I think, and in past we have hired people from outside, so I think the only thing we always evaluate is the person a culture fit. So we have a bar raiser round where someone who's nothing to do with that role, interview that person and see that fits in that culture of the org or not. So I think when times come, obviously professionals will come in picture, but it's always about the org. And as a founder, our job is to always think who will do the best for the org.
Abhishek, coming to you, the one question I would like to ask you is about funding. So when it comes to family-run businesses, legacy businesses, the general mindset amongst people is, they're part of a large group, they're deep-pocketed, so they don't really need capital. So is it really true? Is it really easy if you're starting off on a new venture or foraying into a new vertical and you would need to raise money? Is it really easy for you because you're part of a family-run business? Do you find it difficult to kind of convince investors?
Interesting question, because I can only answer it from a little bit from my experience, but also what I see happening out there. So in DTDC's case, the only capital raise we ever did was in 1990, when my father raised capital from my mother. She pledged her jewelry of $70,000 to him. He went and gave it, and whatever he could get from it. And ever since then, we have never really done a capital raise. But that doesn't mean we stop funding, which means every day, all of us in top leadership and all our management excoms and all our teams, we know that it's the business and the efficiencies that we build, it's the money that's going to get pumped back in, which is going to keep fueling growth. So from zero, where we were when I joined, and we've grown 6x since I've joined, and we've still not done a capital raise. But the question is this: whether you are raising capital as a family business or a legacy player, or you're raising capital as a startup enterprise, there will always be people asking you, why should we believe in your idea? What's the business case? Why does this make sense? And I'm sure all my colleagues here will agree that rigor can never go away. Your family business, assuming you're in one, whatever your company's wealth that is generated, is not your personal wealth. You're still a guardian of that wealth on behalf of shareholders. In some cases, you might be owning 99% of it or 100%. Some cases you aren't. But you owe it not only to your shareholders, but also to your wider stakeholders, which is your employees, which is your partners, who need you to make the right choices, who need you to make those right investments. And you cannot play around with that. And I think my belief is whether you're a legacy player, you take it seriously. And I'm sure startups who have to respond to quite hard-nosed financial investors have to do it. But it's the rigor. So if you've got the good rigor, you'll find people to back you and give funds to you. Or in case you're a little bit lucky, like we have been, find enough cash flows every year to keep pumping in and keep growing. But I think it's the rigor. And I'm sure all good businesses, their leaders focus on that rigor with not only themselves, but the entire team. That's been our philosophy. Thank you.
Pranav, how is it for you? Are you comfortable with capital, or how is it?
Growing up, that was never a question to raise capital from anybody. Maybe it comes with the pride, but of course, we did something in '83 where we set up an industrial unit for woven sacks but again, it was the government, it was a UPFC funded thing along with the bank, but never any VC or anything, because it's a family run thing, and you don't want any outsider. So you raise your own capital, you do your B2B grind, and you use the B2B to fund the B2C, which is what is happening. Very tough to do it when you see money going in B2C, but that's essentially what it is. And there's a lot of pride in a legacy business. So also the fact is that questions are going to be asked, right, to anyone, like be it a startup, be it a legacy business, the questions remain the same. I am giving you money. What are you going to do with it? And they're hard, tough questions. So coming from a legacy business, you would just be like, what? Do you want me to answer? Like, we've been here for 200 years. So we're like, so what? It doesn't matter how long you've been. हमारे पैसे का क्या होने वाला है आगे? So best is कि अपना करो और खुद ही फंड करो.
Rishabh, you had a perspective on that when we were talking this morning, and you were talking about family offices, as the challenges they face. So it'll be interesting to hear.
Yeah, sure. I kind of agree with what we were saying earlier. A lot of family-run companies now, they don't need the capital, but we are seeing a lot of trends where they want to kind of expand the business, grow the pie, sort of working with joint venture partners. We're seeing a lot of cases where legacy family businesses, for example, Escorts Kubota, 80-year-old family-run business. Recently, about 6, 7, 8 years ago, they bought a Japanese JV partner to grow in a new market. And it was an equity investment. It wasn't just being a supplier or something like that. So the many, many examples we are seeing right now were not for the need of capital, but to grow the pie, grow the business, grow the vertical. A lot of families want to kind of expand in it. And in a way, some of it also is de-risking the family from the business as well. Like we were saying, running the business for your stakeholders, your shareholders. So that's kind of a big trend playing out. The earlier zamana of reinvesting back in the business, every dividend flow was back in the company to buy new stock or kind of invest in the business again. That is reducing in some of the very large and very old businesses we are seeing. They're diversifying, like I mentioned in the earlier thing. They want to invest in the markets, in startup, LP funds, whatever, or they want to incubate a new business. So capital is going across these various buckets of requirements. And also we are seeing PE playing a big role in this whole situation. There are specialized PE funds in the West which only focus on family-run businesses, and they fund family disputes, they fund the family separating out, they fund sort of separation from a business where it's amicable as well. So they're kind of very focused, PE funds looking at this industry as well. And if you look at the conversation with Haldiram's right now, what's happening with Cipla, the family wants to get out of it and they want to bring in a friendly PE investor to kind of absorb that business and take it over, and part of strategic on the other side as well. So that's a trend we're going to see playing across a lot of the legacy businesses.
Suraj, coming to you, I wanted to hear from you as to how you retain talent. So kind of everyone, like in the good old days when the startups first started, everyone, would kind of want to join a startup because of ESOPs. ESOPs was a great, kind of crowd puller. That does not exist anymore. ESOPs isn't really pulling crowds. So how do you attract good quality talent and then eventually retain them? What really is your strategy?
So I disagree when you say ESOPs is not a puller. ESOPs, there was a time in between when people had burnt their fingers, because a lot of the startup activity that began in 12, 13, 14, not all of them ended up surviving. So as companies died, people burned their fingers. They were skeptic about ESOPs. There was a time between 15, 16, around those years when people were a little skeptic about taking ESOPs as long-term wealth creation, and they said, "Boss, cash de do, apne ko ESOP nahi samajh mein aata hai." But I think that's changed now. We have so many examples of startups, companies that were startups which are now very large and have led to a lot of people making a lot of wealth for themselves. So ESOPs today is back as a big crowd puller. We use it very effectively. I promote, I keep telling people you should use it if you're a startup, if you're just starting out also. Ultimately, somebody is joining you for two things only, right? One is that they believe in the idea. The other is that they do want to, at the end of the day, create wealth, right? So only an idea will not get them unless you give them that opportunity to create wealth. Uske beyond, see, once people come in, if you give them high quality work, they'll stay. Wealth sub secondary ho jata hai, because everybody wants to go to an exciting place to work, right? You're spending such large part of your life at the workplace that you want that to be exciting. You want that to be intellectually stimulating, right? We started in an industry जिसमें कोई नहीं आना चाहता था. Nobody at that point ever said कि मैं IIT से पढ़ के logistics में जाऊँगा या IIM से पढ़ के logistics में जाऊँगा. But the fact that we created this and we started pulling in our friends to begin with and created the culture that attracted a lot of good talent, which continues to work with us today. There are people who've been with us for over 10 years. For a startup, for a company that's only 13 years old, greater than 10 years, so many senior employees being with us is a big thing. But they've stayed because we're giving them good quality work. We're giving them an environment where they're interacting with smart individuals. You feel like coming to work, having that conversation, thinking about how to solve the next big challenge, or even small challenges on an everyday basis, right? I think it's the quality of work that outrightly is the biggest influencer in anyone staying with you.
So I need to wrap up this.
Few words to that. I think
Yeah.
just like 30 seconds. Hello. So I think this culture point is, I think, very important, because every situation we see where a new partnership is to be formed, a new investor coming in, entering into a new startup or a family-run business, the focus on culture is disproportionately and rightly so high. You do a culture diligence, you do a kind of culture match, you do in a way, a forensic on the founder and see what kind of person he is. The business may be great, but if the founder is not kind of, in the investor perception, not a good person, then the deal is sort of dead on the table. So I think culture becoming a very important factor for investors. And if you're seeing in the Indian ecosystem today, all these culture kind of problems happening in one of the startups, I think that's a big and rightly so an important focus.
So as I come to the end of the conversation, Rishabh, I would quickly like to hear from you. Have you ever imagined running a bootstrapped startup?
No, I'm very much a family #Nepo kid. I like what I do in my family businesses. I can work with startups. All these guys can be clients, but I like to be in a legacy run business. That's my vibe.
Abhishek, what about you?
I kind of don't find the need because I have the freedom to create new businesses within what we do. I think we are starting up every day. And that means that really, and that's it's something that we say. We don't say we are 34 years old. We say we are 34 years young. And that means it's startup. It's what people say. It's day one every day. That's the culture for us. And therefore, I have the freedom to keep starting up as much as I want within this business.
Pranav, have you ever imagined running a
I would just agree with everything Rishabh said. And also the fact, I feel like my B2C is my bootstrap startup. That's what it is. But yeah, I agree with everything he says.
Now, finally, our two startup founders, co-founders. Do you think being part of a legacy conglomerate would have made life easier for you?
It'll be boring. Yeah, I think, again, like, it's not my vibe. Like, since childhood, everyone knew that I'll do this. So it's always doing something which is, and that's how our name also came up. So yeah, I think for me, it'll be very boring, yeah.
Suraj, what about you?
I don't think so. Yeah. So I think the fact that we were absolutely unaffected by any large company has allowed us to grow the way we've grown, because we could think independently, think completely outside the box. There were no rules. Let me put it that way, right? So we created our own rules. We created our own playbook. We played by our own rules, and we've done well. I think legacy businesses do have some sort of influence on how you start to think, at least. we had never had any of those.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for these great insights, and I hope everyone enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you.
Big thank you. I request all of you to please gather for a group photograph. Very interesting discussions. It seems the startup founders here are no less than Khatro ke Khiladi. So please give it up for the Khatro ke Khiladi and those who are expanding their family business by leaps and bounds. So good to hear anecdotes of what's happened in day-to-day lives, how a culture is built. Very interesting conversation, and we have much more coming up. We have another very interesting discussion coming up. Now, we know the challenges that entrepreneurs face. We've heard it from both first-time entrepreneurs who start their startups as well as those who are taking the legacy business forward. Yet, for many people, the high lies in setting up yet another business. They are literally bursting with ideas and need to set up one business after another. It's these serial entrepreneurs that we are going to be talking about in our next panel discussion, starting up again. So please, ladies and gentlemen, give a huge round of applause and welcome our speakers for this session. Please welcome on stage Ms. Sakshi Chopra, MD Peak 15 Ventures. And I would request Sakshi to please be seated from the far end of our stage, from the left. Please welcome Mr. Keshav Reddy, founder Equal. Please welcome Mr. Vivek Biyani, founder Broadway. Please welcome Mr. Anmol Singh Jackie, co-founder and CEO, Gensol Engineering. A round of applause, please. And Mr. Chaitanya Ramalinge Gavda, co-founder WakeFit. And moderating this discussion is Rukmani Rao, consulting editor, Fortune India. A round of applause for the ladies, please. So I'm going to hand it over to Rukmani to steer this discussion ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before we actually hear from all these wonderful people here, very quickly, the reason why we took up starting up again as a point of discussion here is, I'm sure many of you have ambitions beyond the startups that you're running today. And people we have on stage come with great wisdom, and we have an investor who's seen it all, perhaps. So we're going to start, and I hope you have great takeaway from this discussion and maybe inspire you in some way. Chaitanya, I'll start with you. You grew up in largely tier 2 towns in Karnataka. Your success eluded you in your previous 2 ventures, and then WakeFit happened. Talk to us about the grit and gumption that it took for you to even think of starting waking up and, you know, waking up to WakeFit, and also what sort of learnings from the previous ventures that you took to WakeFit?
I think starting up again, grit, gumption, with all due respect, I think those are words that media comes up with, and it's a good story to hear. But frankly, when you're actually going through those periods, it's not a nice time. So think about it. People who are entrepreneurs are type A, aggressive, ambitious, hardworking, alphas, and that behavior has got them success in every stage of life. They've studied hard, they've gotten into good schools, gotten into good companies, and every time they've exhibited that behavior, they've seen more success. And now you become a founder, and no matter how much you exhibit that attribute or those set of attributes, you don't taste success. Because entrepreneurship has so many things out of your control that it is not funny. So you can put in all the hard work you want, but there are a ton of things that are completely out of your control. And I think the first thing that happens is a lot of unlearning and humility building. That yes, there are a bunch of things that are out of your control, and there are only things that you can do that you know. So in 2011, when I came back from the US after living for 6 years, that was the time when Flipkart was raising funds, Myntra was raising funds. I was seeing it in the newspapers. And I thought, as a management consultant, I'm working 10, 12, 14 hours. How hard can it be to be a founder? And boy, was I wrong. Because the next 3.5, 4 years, I tried 2 startups, both in the consumer internet space, and both of them failed spectacularly. One was in the relationship space, where if you're single, you could find your partner, and if you're a couple, you could spend quality time over good activities. And the second one was an online community for women, which took, for the life stages of women, you could have all kinds of experts and their content to engage with. Both of them failed, couldn't get to Series A, raised angel, and then shut it down. And then there was a really tough period where I didn't know what to do with my life. And when I went back to the job market didn't know where to slot me. They said, you're a founder, you did it for 4 years, but what are you? Are you an ops person? Are you a salesperson? Are you a marketing person? So they didn't have any clue where to slot me. So I was getting jobs that were way lesser than what I was getting 4 years back. So from that period, there was a tremendous amount of learning where how I introspected quite a bit about how consumers behaved, how the team behaved, what we could have done differently. And then coincidentally, I met my current co-founder, Ankit, in a Sequoia-funded startup. And Sequoia was the first investor to take a leap of faith on us. And coincidentally, Sakshi and GV, they were the ones who take a leap of faith on us, saying that we can bet on them, that they're doing something right.
I'm sure Sakshi will be able to help us with attributes of such, people with great courage. Anmol, I'll come to you. When we have founders who are trying to even figure out a decent revenue stream for the companies that they run, try to figure out business model, it looks, for some, it's almost like a work in progress all the time. You have 3 streams of businesses, and you're running it simultaneously. How do you juggle between the 3, and also in terms of focus, right? Which is amazing that you run these 3 different kind of businesses. So, help us understand, how do you focus, and what made you think that you'll be able to run 3 businesses at the same time and be successful?
I think the whole idea is about deprioritizing some things. As a founder, we can only prioritize the most important activity at that time.
Family is not one of them.
No, don't do that. But the whole idea is that we can only prioritize certain things. So as founders, you are good at some things and you're not so good at some things. And you need to have your team or your co-founder or your partners which are complementary to you. So for example, if I'm a great 0 to 1 guy, I definitely want more people in my team who think 1 to 10. If I'm a great finance person, if I have good fundraising capabilities, I want people who are more strong with ops. So I think it's divide and conquer. So we are able to, so for all of the businesses that we have, and we are doing them well in the way that it's all very structured. People know what they have to do. People come to the office every morning knowing exactly what they have to perform on. So it's just about aligning the entire interests of the group, and then it's magic, because you are, sometimes some businesses do well, sometimes some businesses do, there are various business cycles, etc., which come to play. But when all of them do it together, you are on a different high. So I think it's good to be a serial entrepreneur managing multiple stuff.
So Anmol, each of these ideas were a spin-off of what you were doing earlier?
Yeah, so I was a clean energy entrepreneur, started with clean energy, loved clean mobility, so got into clean mobility, but I am educated as a petroleum engineer, so got into oil and gas. So that's...
So you didn't want to let go of anything that you knew?
Such compelling opportunities, how do you leave them?
Lovely. Vivek, it's a completely different story. You perhaps have seen and have been associated with, perhaps in modern India's biggest retail brand story. And you've seen also the best and worst of times. Now with Broadway, what are the learnings that you've taken from that? And how difficult was that period to see like a brand that you were associated with and then move on? Was there any baggage at all when you started Broadway?
See, I think, in any consumer business, I think the fundamental starting point is that the business doesn't stay the same, right? So, even if, let's say, the journey with Future Group would have continued, I think there is always a reinvention that happens in 5 years. So I think, let's say, when we started thinking about Broadway, I don't think so the baggage was really a problem. Because I think we are trained to think in a manner that what will be relevant for the time of today. We are trained to think through that, where are the gaps in, consumer behavior, consumer engagement, what is it that the market really wants. I think that comes a little naturally, I feel. So I think that was easier and the more exciting part of it. I think from the journey between, let's say, being part of Future Group and then, let's say, there was a journey in COVID where, there was a insolvency journey. Anything takes time, right? I don't think so that one can say that, it just flipped, we could take it easy. I think it's a journey. It takes you 6 months, 9 months. But I think as entrepreneurs, I think there's one thing when one introspects that, most entrepreneurs have resilience, I feel. Most entrepreneurs have tenacity, most entrepreneurs have perseverance. And I think the more you, read about some of these things, the more you read about stories about this, it helps you come out of, a lot of behavioral traits about yourself in terms of how one needs to think ahead. I think that journey could have yielded only 2 ways for me personally. I think one could have been a journey where you could have yielded in your own thoughts that why it happened, why is it so bad, so on and so forth. Or actually creating a new business is what gives you energy. And, that energy is what takes you ahead and carries you ahead. Luckily for me, that happened. I think.
But Vivek, for you, the pyramid was almost inverse. You were coming from scale and now starting up, right? So, how do you adjust when you're not dealing with scale? Or is it a challenge at all?
It's a massive challenge. It's I think, and like in consumer business, unlearning is something that you always do. I think, I feel I'm doing my first business right now, almost, because I think the starting point is different. The kind of teams we are able to bring in are very, very different. Is it great fun? It's amazing fun. Is it something that I feel it's will have my legacy on it? That's what keeps you going. I think those are kind of motivation factors vis-a-vis what you did earlier. But yeah, it almost feels like it's my first business that I'm doing right now.
Lovely. Talking about legacy, Keshav, I think we have covered GVK as a group, right? And for you, perhaps your family is known as, one of the infrastructure giants in India. Father, grandfather, all of them are out there. People know them. And then you choose a completely different path. Was it difficult to convince your grandfather, father that no, my path is very different? And also, is there any learning that you take from Mr. GVK Reddy and also Sanjeev Reddy?
No, thanks for that question. Actually, it's quite funny because the previous panel is super relevant. I'm on both sides of the table.
Agreed.
And I feel both sides of the table exactly so. Going back, every 5 years, we actually built a new business from 1990 in a different industry. And it actually takes a very rare gene to do that. You look at most family businesses tend to stay in the same line of business and ancillaries. And that's actually something that we have owned over the years. Infrastructure was just very, very well known. And over the last decade, there were many other businesses that have become very large. But when I went to college in MIT and came back, I realized actually innovation in tech is going to disrupt every single business unless you have a strong balance sheet or some licenses or large plants. And I always felt like, building something of scale was super exciting for me. So after we came back, we transitioned from GVK as a family business to Reddy Ventures as a family office. And this has happened to very mature family businesses in the West. So we have done that, and now I've jumped into one of the businesses which is called Equal, and I'm building it from scratch as a founder. So I just came from GFF for 3 days, and it's exciting. 2 years old. Last month from zero, we've now done 55 million transactions in a month. So that's exciting for me. And that scale is what excites me. And then professional management can take over.
So staying away from family business helped you?
Yeah, see, family businesses don't innovate. If somebody tells you, they put capital and resources, but find people to innovate. So when you actually step out, like what Vivek was saying, you can really think and build from scale. So right now, we're incubated 5 businesses, which over the next 5 years, you will say, oh, that's so obvious that, you should have been in healthcare AI. You should have been in identity. You should have been in financial services AI. But that's the excitement. And all the, the pharma business or the data analytics business, they're all professionally managed. Takes up so little amount of time.
Interesting. Sakshi, we've heard from the entrepreneurs. You sit on the other side of the table. When let's say a founder comes to you who perhaps has run successful businesses or comes on the back of failure, to an investor, what matters really if there is a founder who's coming with a string of failures? Does it matter to you? And also, is success or having run a successful startup, is it a necessary barometer that you would say when gauging a founder's ability to run business? And we would love to hear any anecdotes. I mean, may not be taking names, but if any interesting founders that you've met and something that you thought stood out.
Yeah, no, so I think in our business, we think failure teaches you multiple lessons, and hence a founder who hasn't been very successful in their prior startup is, we love that actually, and we're extremely excited to meet like a second-time founder, irrespective of, what the how the first venture landed. Because I think there are some qualities inherently that only a founder can possess, and someone who's already run a business versus, let's say, backing someone completely raw to run the same set of business. I think most of the investors would put their chips on a founder with experience. And hence, I think, failure is not a bad word in our business. In fact, many investing firms also hire ex-founders simply because, just the relatability factor is so high. When they speak to the new set of founders, that you want to get into business with, or to be able to help founders think through situations. So I think it's a huge asset either ways, whether in the firm or whether you choose to back them. I think some qualities that really stand out with founders with experience are grit. Founder has to be very gritty, even in good and bad times. And someone who's seen cycles is obviously has only survived due to sheer grit. Founders are unique animals who have the capacity to dream big. And, I think that's really important as you're building a business. And I would say the third, outside of course the more obvious ones, I'm just stating what, things that we really look for. I would say the third thing is to tell a great story and inspire, because as you build the business and as you scale, you have to have the ability to not only sell to your investors or tell a great story to them, but also hire really, I would say, talented people from the industry, or convince them to join you, and then hold a team of very talented people together. That takes a unique capability. It takes a certain amount of storytelling and inspiration. So I think some of these things only come together when you've had experience in life, and that's best demonstrated by an ex-founder.
So would it be fair to assume if you are to start up again, probably you should be doing it post your 30s or 35 years?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
So would it be safe to, assume that starting up again is a great journey once you cross the threshold of, let's say, 30 or 35, and you've got life experience, and perhaps the chances of your, venture being successful is a lot more? Have you seen, founders mature with age and get better in terms of decision making once they are a little older compared to 20-something?
I think that holds across for all of us, founder or non-founder. Age does teach you a thing or two. But, look, I don't think if someone gets it right the first time, you just keep building. And let's take the example of Zepto. It's not our portfolio company, but it was started by two boys who dropped out of college, and they were under 20. And they've built an incredibly good business. So some people just get it right the first time, and I don't think age came in their way. But of course, do I believe that they'll only keep getting better as they keep growing older and maturing? Of course. But they had a great starting point too. And then there are some people who just grow up with experience, so it cuts both ways.
Sure, thank you. Also, a great part of being a founder is the mental makeup, be it how you take success and failure. And given the rate of startup failure in India is high, we are guilty as well that we write about the celebration of entrepreneurs, but 10 years down the line, is this startup going to exist? Will it be not there? Is something that even none of us know. I'll start with you, Chaitanya. What do you think, in terms of a mental makeup, should a founder have just when he's approaching his venture? You know, how do you mentally prepare yourself, and what are the do's and don'ts of being able to go through that journey?
I don't want to sort of take the tone of advice. Maybe I'll share what I learned from those 2 startups and then what I brought it to WakeFit. Maybe I'll talk from the perspective of team members, customers, and how it changed me. From the perspective of team members, I believe that relationships are an infinite game. I had built a 10-member team over those 2 startups, which failed. And when the second startup had to be shut down and I could no longer afford to pay, I realized that they had all stayed with me for 4 years, working below market salaries, really slogged it out, but then they're failing as much as I do. So over the next 3 months, 9 out of 10 of them, I managed to get them jobs in Bangalore at a higher salary, which is more closer to the market reality. And that ended there. But then when I started WakeFit, out of the 9 people, 4 people came back and joined WakeFit in our early team.
Amazing.
So it was, again, relationship. Similarly, when I joined the Sequoia-funded startup Tapzo, and that's where I met my current co-founder, we just worked hard, but when WakeFit happened, we left. But then when Sequoia wanted to fund us 3 years later, the ref check that they did was with the founder of that startup. And we didn't know at all, but he has given us good feedback about us. So I said, relationships that you build are not because you want something out of them. You just build it because it's the right thing to do. So that was a big, big learning for me, that whether it's team members, whether it's customers, whether it's investors, relationships are it's an infinite game. You cannot do it because you want something out of them. That was the first thing. The second thing was from the consumer side. What I learned from those 2 failed startups was no amount of focus groups, interviews, observations are ever going to give you the insights that you actually creating an MVP and iterating on it and learning from what they actually do gives. So talking, observing, listening, they're all good, but ultimately what you learn is how they behave when a product or service is in front of them. Will they open up their wallets and spend for it? That's the big learning. So today at WakeFit, we have built the company to be led by consumer behavior. Any problem we face today, we pick up the phone and speak to 100 customers. And that DNA has percolated across the company. So any new product manager joins, any new marketing person joins, any problem they come to me with, please go find 100 customers, go talk to them. And then come back to me with what your hypothesis is, what you want to test, and prove or disprove. So that has become a core part of DNA. My lunch break is filled with hearing customer voice recordings from calls. So we are constantly led by consumers, and that is the holy grail of how we believe it can be building a sustainable business. And the third part is about myself. I read somewhere that entrepreneurship is almost like self-purification. So I cannot believe the kind of evolution I've had over 13 years, 3 startups. After you see that you're down to your last 800 rupees, you don't know what you're going to do for the next meal, you don't know how you're going to pay the team's salary. After you've seen that, nothing else scares you. Nothing else feels bad. So you figure out a way, and next morning you wake up and you find a way to solve whatever is in front of you. So I think it really changes you. And I've seen both. I've seen people become very cynical and jaded, and I've seen people who have become very humble and absorbing everything like a sponge and becoming better and better as a person. So I hope that I always remain on this side.
You clearly are on the latter side.
I hope so.
Sure. Anmol, has, three ventures changed you as a person, and do you see any changes in you in the last 10, 12 years as an entrepreneur?
No, so my philosophy is good day I'm okay, bad day I'm okay. Doesn't really matter. absolutely.
Sab changa si.
No, good day I'm okay, bad day I'm okay, doesn't matter. So have to be very mission driven. You could win a Fortune 40 under 40, but still go and work 16 hours tomorrow. Or you could do anything. You could have a very bad day when you lost a customer, but still go the next day and improve yourself. So doesn't really matter. I don't think emotions play too much part in at least in my journey. It's about just putting in the amount of hard work and just keep on building. So
Anmol, is that a personality trait or have you inculcated that over years?
no, actually, I've seen that if I become too happy, me being too happy doesn't impact the business too much. Me being too sad doesn't impact the business too much. So might as well keep doing what I do good. So just keep doing the job.
Sure. Vivek, for you, the journey from Future to now Broadway, how has that changed you as a person? And in terms of learning that you've taken from your previous stint, how do you apply that? And, what drives you as an entrepreneur today compared to, say, 10 years ago?
So I think the latter part of the question in terms of what drives me today. See, I think when I was at Future, I mean, obviously you are working under a very large umbrella, and I think a lot of time what you do, the impact of it is not always measurable to what you do. So I think one thing which is very satisfying today for me at least is that whatever one does, the impact is very direct, very measurable. You can actually simply know what, changes in your own behavior can create an impact on the business, which potentially didn't happen earlier. So I think when you are in a journey where you are building a young business, I think that role of the founder in terms of, I just feel right now that the number of places that you kind of spend time in can create such a disproportionate impact is, I think, just phenomenal. Which I think we, in some sense, couldn't do earlier, because I think when you are running or part of a larger umbrella organization, I think you end up spending time on many other things which may or may not directly, I think, create an impact on the business. So I think one definite learning for me is that, when you are running a 0 to 1 business, which I did actually earlier in Future as well, but I think now when you're running a 0 to 1 business, I think just being very meticulous about what are the 3 things that will create maximum impact and just, getting and allowing yourself to spend time there, I think very important, and one can see measurably what kind of happens. I think the second thing obviously is, there are so many learnings in terms of, what you kind of carry forward. I think this idea of, building culture, and I think the earlier panel touched upon it, I think, because I think I had the opportunity to see what culture could do when the organization scales. I think the emphasis that we put today on the Broadway team and the culture and how we want to build it actually gems a lot from that. Because at the end of the day, I think in an organization, one thing that survives is culture, right? And I think culture needs to survive not when you're a 10-member team, a 20-member team, a 100-member team, or a 1,000-member team. It has to survive through that. But the culture, the root is set when you are a 1, 2, 5-member team. So I think that if there is one thing I would like to say is that I think I've seen in terms of, very specific things that maybe happened in Future, why it happened, what we could learn from it, what we need to therefore do today when we are in a 0 to 1 phase. And I think that's amazing. And many, many more stories about it.
But Vivek, having family around when you're running a business and not having them around in your next venture, does, the family cushion play any part when you're a part of a group and then when you branch out on your own, does it have any impact or does it change the way you think?
Massive impact. I think when there is family around, I don't think so. You always feel the buck stops at you. There is always someone who can figure out something if you're not able to figure it out. I think when you're building a venture by yourself, that option just doesn't exist. I think there is an inherent feeling in your mind that you have to figure out everything. There is no one else who's going to go figure out even one thing for you, right? So I think that's a big change. And I think that change really impacts the way you behave. That change really impacts the decision you make. It creates an impact at every level. So,
Keshav, I mean, similar question to you. Does family cushion, play any part in decision making, or does it provide a cushion when it comes to you making bad decisions?
I think family, I'm just taking a step back from your question. I was just thinking about, what really matters to an entrepreneur. And when your earlier question was, when you have a tough day, you're always happy. But most entrepreneurs are irrational, and startup entrepreneurs for sure. That's how they get through a lot. And I feel I love the excitement of scale. So that's what drives me. And that's what drives a lot of entrepreneurs actually, seeing something grow in whatever form and factor. So that has always driven me as a person. So when I was in my first startup, while I was in college and undergrad, that drove me. Today it drives me. In large scale businesses, it drives me. You know, we run India's largest healthcare foundation. I sit on the board of that company, that 108 EMR ambulances. We finished our 1 billionth phone call, right? And we have saved about 30 million lives a year. But then I come back to Equal, where we're just scaling up early days, and that also drives me. So I think incentives, motivation is really important, and everything around it is just a facet. In terms of family, I think my family is my biggest supporters and my biggest critics. So even though it's a company that I'm building, but it's part of the family office. So family office gives you the blend of family being there as your mentors, as your guides, but you get to do what you want and ensure that you are accountable by the end of the day.
Sure. Sakshi, also, we've heard from all these people in terms of what it takes to be an entrepreneur and probably look at success and failure. And if you were to sort of advise the young entrepreneurs that we have today here, what are a couple of things that you think that a founder should perhaps inculcate or grow when it comes to how to deal with success and how to deal with failure? What would be your piece of, 2 or 3 takeaways for them to say that, okay, this is how, things are going to be all right. This is what you need to do.
I think all the people here who've been selected to, chosen to be 40 under 40 don't really need any counsel from me. Candidly, they're always smart achievers.
They will always be all ears to an investor.
But I would say that maybe just a few things as the role of a founder keeps changing. When you initially start up, the founder is probably a specialist in a function or maybe 2-3 responsibilities across the org. But I think as the organization keeps growing, the founder has to also think about her or his development in the journey. So at some point you have to I would say transition from being a founder to the company CEO or see yourself, and that means developing cross-functional responsibilities, leading an org, setting the right culture, and that often is very ignored. So and I would say that can only happen if the founder consciously invests in his or her development. And one of the best ways to do it is just surround yourself with some very high quality people who you can trust, because being a founder is an exceptionally lonely journey. You have very few people who can actually stick their neck out for you, and you're quite alone in all the decisions you take, especially when things don't go right. So if you can have a few well-wishers or advisors who can really speak to you and help you, especially when the chips are down, that is invaluable in my view. Invest in yourself, invest in your journey and your growth. So a lot of founders of mid-sized or very scaled organizations often have a coach, because they don't know who to depend and lean on to discuss some of the ongoing challenges of the organization or the business. So I think that's probably the only advice I would give to some of the founders here. Otherwise, I think they're quite smart.
Lovely. Chaitanya, again, for the sake of all the winners here, what are, let's say, a few do's and don'ts that you would want to share with the founders here when they're looking to start up again? Business decisions or other takeaways that you think you got from your earlier journey. And
Sure. I think now I'll probably give very quick answers. One is intellectual honesty. If you're really honest about what made the previous ventures fail or what made them succeed, that's a very, very good starting point, because we humans have the tendency to take credit for the successes and blame externalities for failures. But if you're intellectually honest, then you will know your role in success or in failure. That gives you true learnings from what has happened. And second is, I really believe that you should treat all the people fairly, your team members, your investors, your customers. And if you do that, it will always pay back in spades. Those are the only two things that I want to leave with.
Anmol, what would you want to share in terms of?
So two things. One, cut your losses in time. No point if something's not working out. Don't just don't stretch it too much and lose more money on it or lose more time on it. So cut your losses in time. And the second one, I think, create wealth for everybody, for the entire team, for your vendors, for your collaborators, for everybody. So create wealth for everybody, not for just for the founding team.
Sure. Vivek, what would you say are some of the do's and don'ts if somebody is wanting to start up again?
Something to start up again, I mean, I think you have to have a very strong reason to start up again and to maybe even start a venture, because I think if that reason doesn't exist from within, I don't think so you'll have the tenacity to go through it. So I think one has to really think hard in terms of why you're going to do it. Will you do it for 10 years? Will you do it when no one is going to back you? X, Y, Z. And I think if you're able to answer it, I think that's the only time one should do it, because I think that will give you the best chance of success.
But Vivek, do you think it's even possible for someone who's starting up to think 10 years ahead, or is it a journey that on the go you realize that I can sustain or not?
No, not 10 years. I think 10 years, who knows? I think that I'm not saying, but I think the reason I'm saying, why would someone want to get into a journey of entrepreneurship? What would that mean for them? It cannot be flimsy. It cannot be. I think obviously it's become such a celebrated space right now, right? So I think there's so many people who want to do it, but also I think that creates the reason why there is so many companies that maybe don't make it. But I think that if you are clear why you're doing it, I think you'll find a lot of answers to keep sustaining it. And I think if you can sustain an idea for 5 years, you'll find an answer, right? So I think if you have that tenacity, you will get there.
But, honestly, we've seen so many of them who haven't even the need to be famous or be there, like rock star founders that we end up seeing these days. You know, should somebody even aim to be? Is that the reason why somebody even should look to be a startup founder? Do you see?
I mean, everyone can have their own reason. I mean, maybe if that's what drives you, and if that's a reason where you can really spend, your life to achieve that, why not? I mean, so.
Lovely. Keshav, you're both an investor as well as a founder. So how does it, how do you juggle the two hats? And is there interlearning that comes to both the roles that you play?
So before I became a founder, I also started our family office VC fund and invested in about 30 companies in software. So what you learn as an investor is absolutely invaluable. As you become a founder, because you realize that things take time, capital doesn't solve issues, people are really important. And if you're only an investor, your mindset is slightly different. And if you're only a founder, your mindset is different. So I think it's a blessing to be both sides of the table, and you're able to value what's important in both sides. So
sure. Sakshi, if I may ask you, when a founder is coming to you to start up again, couple of things that they need to keep in mind when they come with a pitch to you?
Frankly, for me, the starting point is really why is the founder pursuing the journey she or he has chosen to do? And alluding back to what the point Vivek just made, most good founders have come up with their business idea because they experienced a real sore pain point or a need where they thought there was, which was ready to be solved and completely being overlooked by the market participants, or rather the incumbents of that industry. And hence, that's where the idea was germinated that, so I'll take an example of, let's say, WakeFit. I love the fact that when Chaitanya and Ankit pitched to me and my colleague that, where they asked me like, what brand of mattress do you sleep on? And honestly, I couldn't remember. And then they said, did you buy it? I said, no, I didn't buy it. I just outsourced it because the whole experience was so shabby, right? Imagine going into a dealer store and then, you've been, they show you like some 20 mattresses and they can't tell the difference between one from the other. So that whole, I would say, customer journey was so broken and the experience was so broken. And then when Chaitanya reminded me how many hours of my life I spend on my bed sleeping, it just suddenly dropped a penny that, this is such an important pain point, and, and it's not the best sleep that I have. I sometimes wake up with a stiff back, and you could account a large part of that to, the quality of the mattress that you're sleeping on. So I think most founders either suffer or incur that pain point in their journey, or they are able to identify, a very sore pain point in the market, and hence that's the idea of disruption that comes through. So I think I look for founders with a lot of clarity in terms of what they are building and why. And then, of course, like I said, just the whole storytelling is so important. To be able to articulate what you're building and why it'll be different and disruptive is very important. At least in the early stages, this is what we largely need to see. And then, of course, it has to make a lot more financial sense. If it's an ongoing business, then what we look for is the viability of the economic engine. But, yeah.
You spoke about gritty founders. If one has to ask you in terms of weightage, when perhaps deciding to fund a startup or not, what would be your weightage to how the founder is, the grit of the founder, and business viability? What would be more important to you?
So I think grit is tested over time. There's no way to identify that in the first conversation. But I would say that what we really look for is the uniqueness in the idea and the dream or the vision the founder is articulating, and how disruptive that is. And look, founders have the unique ability to really zoom out into the future and see that how this idea will, grow and disrupt the industry. So I think if they can carry us along, that's a great starting point.
Lovely. I think we can take a few questions from the audience as well. Can we have a mic passed over to the audience, please? Sure. Anybody who has a question, request you to raise your hand. I think we had a few written on a piece of paper. We have a gentleman whose hand is up there at the back.
My name is Prasad Rautre. I've just started. Thank you for inviting me here. I just wanted to hear you all. I run a company called Zivica. This is a human capital management marketplace trying to organize a B2B ecosystem where we can supply properly and meet the startup community's pain areas of starting. My question that I have is, I liked, and I'm 51 years. I just left Airtel as the Chief Business Officer, so I do not belong to the crowd here as 40 below 40, but I feel like that. My question to you is, it's not necessary to fail, I guess, right? You don't have a choice at this age. So what are your advice to people who are above 40?
I mean, I would actually encourage each of you to share your thought here.
Look, that's just a number. 40 is just a number. So don't. What would be my advice to you? Look, just build a good team, and make sure that. But before you build that big team, make sure that the business that you're building genuinely has PMF, product market fit. So I would say that since you come from the industry, go test your business idea with your ex-employer, and if they are willing to be in business with you, and you're able to really address a pain point for them, then clearly that's one good proof point of PMF. But as a startup founder, I think that's most important. You have to get the product or the service really right, and hence you have to establish that you have PMF. Once you have PMF, then you start thinking about next set of things you have to do. But I would say this is your primary solve in the early days. Don't let age come in the way. If it doesn't work and you fail, so be it. Take a step back and maybe think of something else. Because let's say that you can continue to run till you're 70, 75, so you still have many years ahead.
Keshav?
I think there are two large biases. One is people think startup founders are young. But the problem is actually very successful startup founders, few are very young. Most are actually in their 40s, late 30s, early 40s, because they've seen a career path and learned a lot. So I think age is just a number. The second thing I've realized is that startup founders also feel in the early days that capital will solve everything, right? Raising capital solves everything. And that's absolutely wrong. If you find PMF, like what Sakshi said, you will get enough capital. And that's one of the things that you realize, that disproportionate amount of money goes to the best companies because they figure out something that others didn't. So those are my two advices for you.
I just feel that be fearless here. I mean, honestly, if you're building a young company, you will have to take bold bets. Obviously, be careful about what decisions you make. But I think only with bold bets will you be able to kind of, have an idea which is disruptive, which will be able to, work through a market, which will have multiple players trying to do something. And I think if let's say you've got the product market fit, if you've surrounded yourself with great people, and if you have, the grit to see it through, you'll get there. But yeah, be fearless.
I think the same principles apply to any startup, whether the founder is 50 years or 20 years. The business made sense, great team, some amount of funding. I think that's the holy grail of whether you're 20 or you're 50. So it doesn't, I would apply the same principles, perhaps if I was starting up at 50.
Chaitanya?
Just two things. To achieve product market fit, capital is not the reason. First principles thinking is usually the answer. And secondly, until you find PMF, please keep your fixed costs low. Your rentals, your salaries, that gives you tremendous amount of freedom to iterate and try it out.
Are there any more questions?
Hi. Hi, Chaitanya. It's me, Ajita. I generally wanted to ask you, since you are kind of, my question was very specific to D2C brands. So there was a time we all wrote extensively about D2C brands kind of overtaking the legacy brands, and now from whatever I hear it is the legacy brands who have a distinct edge because they have brick and mortar distribution in place. So for the next level of growth, what is it that the D2C brands need to do now?
I don't know about the other industries, but in our industry, the answer is pretty straightforward. We play in 3 sectors: mattresses, furniture, and accessories. In all of them, the unorganized part is probably 90% of the overall market, and organized is very small. So if we start worrying about legacy companies, new companies, that is a zero-sum game. But I think the true growth lies in converting the unorganized market to organized. And that's where we work very hard at. So ignore the competition, keep an eye on what we can learn from them. But the focus is solely the customer, where there's so much of unorganized. And if you truly demonstrate value, they will come and they will believe in you. So for us, that's been the way. And to get to 1,000 crores in 9 years, it's a very, very, very small part. There's lots more to do together, and so we are excited about that.
Vivek, I would like to have the same question to you, because you are creating a brick and mortar platform for many of these D2C brands through Broadway. What really is the challenge? Are they stagnating because distribution is becoming a challenge for them?
I think when we look at India, and I think we do feel that, and Bloom wrote about it extensively recently as well, right? That I think whichever category you operate in, I think one needs to really get a reality check on terms of what's the size of that market. Because I think any new D2C brand is built with a particular kind of narrative story and the reason why they exist in that consumer's life. I think over time, if the brand doesn't expand itself to, grow their TAM, the stagnation is very real in India. So my view is that brands will have to keep growing their target market that they address. Because in India, at least whatever I've seen, I feel that, up till a point, the growth in customer numbers doesn't happen or happens slowly. So if you're able to add more categories, if you're able to add more products, I think that's what will help, brands grow and go to the next level. Yeah.
Sure. Do we have any more questions from the audience? Do I see any hands go up? I think it's a great chance for you to ask questions and probably also great learning. Okay, we don't have any more. And on that note, thank you all for joining us here today. And I hope people sitting in our audience have had good takeaways. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rukmani, for steering this very engaging discussion and lots of insights coming in from the young entrepreneurs on stage. Thank you all for sparing the time and coming here. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very, very honored to welcome our chief guest for the evening. So please give a huge round of applause to Mr. K.V. Kamath, Chairman, National Bank for Financing Infrastructure and Development, who is here with us. And we will be listening to him soon, but would request all of you to just be a little patient. We are setting up the stage for something very interesting that is coming up. What do 40 under 40 CEOs do in their free time? What are their passions? Here's a quick look at a video that is coming up. And this is what they told our team when we met them.
I recently discovered my love for well-written Malayalam movies. I hadn't watched Malayalam movies for some time, and that love has been reignited.
For me, my inspiration is Mr. Mukesh Ambani. I think with what he's done with Reliance and now with Jio and with Reliance Retail and you know, his sheer vision that he has and his ability to execute on that vision and his ability to go into the nth level of detail when it comes to executing any of his plans. I think that's the reason he's someone I'm extremely inspired by.
I think the day I think that I've arrived will be the end for me. Long way to go.
Invest more in people, be a little less emotional and aggressive, and listen to your parents more.
I don't think that we have arrived still. I think there's a lot more to do for us. We still have only 150 million annual transactors, which is just 10% of India's population, right? So we're still very far from our goal of like serving 1 billion Indians. So I would say we're still quite a distance from arriving, but hopefully on the right track.
Turning around a company from the brink of bankruptcy and all the issues that came along with it, all for no fault of the management, which was due to a very, very badly implemented simple policy change, was the most difficult problem I faced. The determination, grit, courage and the perseverance to come out on top is what led me to finally overcome that and make this company far, far bigger than what it was.
So when I was in third year of the college, I couldn't find interest in college studies, college curriculum, and I was lost into bad groups, bad company, bad habits, and I did everything that I cannot tell on the camera. But I took a decision of dropping out from a college for which I took a loan of like 1.5 lakh, and my family was living on a rented house in a slum, and I took that risk. So back then it looked like the worst decision, but today it looked like the best decision taking such a big risk.
I think when we opened our store in Milan, I just cannot describe that feeling when I was outside that store. I think that was one of the most precious moments in my life.
We think there is a definite path of, let's say, do engineering, MBA. A definite path will always have a definite returns. So if you want to do something substantial, something different, you have to take different path and take risk. So my advice to my younger self, maybe I would have started earlier, and that's my advice to others also. Just there's no right time to do things, just do it.
For me, it's just taking some long walks with my dog. That really helps me in my.
Yeah, I mean, I'm particular about my fitness, so hitting the gym, going for a run, and probably grabbing a good book sometimes.
Right after IIT, I went to BCG, and as a 22-year-old at BCG, I was talking to the CEOs of public listed companies, Fortune 500 firms, discussing, brainstorming their business strategies, flying around the world, staying in the Taj for months altogether. And as that 22, 23-year-old brash girl, I actually felt that I have arrived in life, and this is my time where if I put my mind to something, I can really get it.
So we've had so many entrepreneurs talk to us live here. You've seen a video as well. I'm sure there's been at least one light bulb moment that has come during the evening today. I hope you've shared this with all who care to listen. And if you are posting online, do use the hashtag FortuneIndia40under40. Now, the theme of today's awards focuses on the flourishing ecosystem of entrepreneurship in India. We have with us one such young leader who is growing legacies. When the then 22-year-old Shashwat Goenka joined the RP Sanjeev Goenka Group in 2012, he wanted the 200-year-old group to enter new age businesses to be a future-ready business house. Please welcome on stage Mr. Shashwat Guha, Vice Chairman, RP Sanjeev Goenka Group. Let's hear him engage in a fireside chat with our chief guest, Mr. K.V. Kamath. But please welcome Mr. Goenka with a huge round of applause.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to an extremely special session today. I have the extreme honor and privilege to introduce to you a man who has always been ahead of the times. Someone who has the ability to identify trends early and act on them. Someone with strong implementation skills. A self-made man, a visionary, a thought leader, a man with an earnest dedication, and a man with stellar leadership skills. A man who is extremely humble, unassuming, but who has been extremely successful in everything he has done, from his early days in ICICI to the New Development Bank, to now as the chairman of the National Bank for Financing Infrastructure and Development. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as we welcome Mr. K.V. Kamath. Thank you so much, sir, for agreeing to do this. You are an inspiration for almost, if not every one of us in this room. So we're very, very grateful to you. So without further ado, sir, I'll get on with the first question. Sir, under your leadership, ICICI became one of the largest and most successful private sector banks in the country, where assets grew from 21,000 crores to almost 4 lakh crores. What was your vision when you started taking ICICI onto its high growth trajectory?
Well, you know, when we need to go back quite some time to 96, 97. At that time, whatever we did was to survive. So it's like that plant which needs to figure out how to catch the sunlight, and you bend yourself into various shapes to do that. And I'm sure most entrepreneurs out here have gone through that moment when you have to struggle and you have to pitch. So what helped us change was new things that were happening around us, which had not yet caught on here. For example, the advent of technology, the freeing up of technology. In financial services business, products which had not yet launched. So for example, ICICI came from a project finance background. But except for HDFC, which gave home loans, there wasn't anybody who gave any other type of loans. Credit card had just started. So building this at scale, I think, helped us chart a new path and create that excitement. And everything with the technology, I would say, base or foundation. And that made a difference. I'm talking of late 90s, early 2000s.
Absolutely. And so you spoke about technology. So long before digital and technology became buzzwords, you championed the modernization of the Indian banking sector with initiatives like online banking, mobile banking, ATMs, etc. You transformed ICICI from a development finance institution into a diversified financial services conglomerate. So how did you drive this change? Because we as entrepreneurs, despite being leaders in young organizations, find it extremely hard to drive change.
Yeah, think you're right. It's difficult to drive change. At times you need to figure out why are you doing it. So let me explain our purpose at that point of time. Again, this is, you're talking about somewhere around 2000. ICICI Bank was a small bank with just about 50 or 100 branches. There are only 100 ATMs in the country. The largest bank in the country had 10,000 branches. And we were being given 50, a license for 50 new branches a year. So the arithmetic is very simple. If your largest competitor has got 10,000 branches and you are given 50 branches a year, it will take you 200 years to get there. So how do you break this and how do you create momentum? That basically drove everything we did. And the answer was technology. So we said, year one, we'll roll out 1,000 ATMs. There are 100 ATMs in the country, never mind. We'll roll out 1,000. And we'll put 10 ATMs around each branch. So there's a catchment area. And that thought pervaded into everything else we did. Whether it was ATMs or whether it was the internet or whether it was doing things out of a back office or so that the branch got freed up to do things. A branch running 2 shifts and so on. So variety of things which made for the ease of dealing with us. And the very interesting thing, and probably that part of it still is true, you give the customer convenience. Convenience is king. Not your brand, not trust, which I as a banker would find it very, very difficult to acknowledge. It is not trust, it is convenience. Convenience trumps trust. So we basically scaled on that platform, the technology platform, and created the convenience for the customer.
No, absolutely. And so just building off of that, so scale versus niche, you mentioned, you all had 100 outlets versus other people who had more. So how should we as entrepreneurs think about our businesses?
Again, in today's context, if you cut to today, you have problems are not different. I would put it very simply as the theory of constraints. So our constraint was somebody has got 10,000 branches, I got 100 branches or 50 branches, I'm allowed 50 new branches there. How do I overcome this challenge? If you look around to today's challenges that you have, the same thing it's all over again. Somebody else is very big, you are small, how do you do it? So basically you will need to reinvent what you are doing and do something different from what the other party is doing so that you build a scale. So to me it is learning from how to handle constraints and then scaling up on that. That generally works. Any incumbent who is challenged by a newco, the newco goes through the same challenges.
Absolutely. And so you were able to identify trends early enough and leverage them as almost a first mover advantage. So what are 2 or 3 practical steps that you think entrepreneurs today can do to identify trends early in their respective industries to stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah, I think it's not too difficult. If you, there are a whole lot of dots there are a whole lot of pointers there. If you can put those dots together and collectively read the pointers, you get on the right way. Let me give you an example. So I said technology. So it's this we are talking about late 90s. When you look at banking technology, it was only mainframes. Of course, today nobody understands what is or was a mainframe. Though some very large banks still run mainframes. So we said we can't afford mainframes. So what next? So we said, okay, the Sun Microsystem boxes that are out there, I think that works for us. So let's try. And so at every stage it was experimentation, taking a bit of risk. Then you master what you're doing. You have also mastered risk, and then you grow. I'm talking about banking where you always need to be able to identify the risk a priori and square it before you take the next step. But honestly, in the launch of all the businesses we did, the biggest risk was technology because we were doing virtually everything for the first time in India of say 25 years back. So other than that, business itself was not a problem. But again, at times you come across different sorts of challenges. Let me put one in context. That's not a problem today for banks, but it's a problem today for many other businesses. They said, we don't have people. So we have hit that wall number of times. Again, theory of constraints. You don't have people, try what you could do. So I'll give you something we did in 2001 or 2. We said we'll codify all our training material, give it to NIT, you run it. You run the program, you have 5,000 kids passing out, we will take the entire 5,000. So we did it for 2-3 years, and other banks started hiring from this school. Then we found that we didn't have senior people in the branch. We said we'll tie up with the university to set up a campus. So we set up a campus in Bangalore with Manipal University to have 1,000 kids, graduates who are doing a 1-year program, who would be fit for maybe a deputy branch manager or a senior person in the branch. These were the short skills those days. People with right, I would say, technology skills to sit in the branch didn't exist. So you had to train them to be bankers and to be versatile in technology. So every single thing that you can think of, you will hit a constraint. It's no point in sitting back and saying, I have a constraint, I don't know what to do. You'll have to go out there and try to figure out how to resolve it.
Thank you for that, sir. And so what I take away is to identify what are the constraints and that one key constraint, and to find a solution to address that.
See, it's very interesting. I'll talk of a company which is now your company, First Source. So how did First Source happen? First Source happened because we wanted to centralize a whole lot of facilities, which of course they have now become much bigger and much. But we alone did not have the scale to do that in the bank, and we could not do it in the bank. So we said we'll put a company which will not only do this work for us, but will also do it for global banks and institutions. So First Source was a vehicle which had scale, because it was not only going to serve our need, but it would also serve a global need. But in the event, what happened was, as this grew off, I say the bank itself grew at such a pace that we said we could do a lot of things, these things ourselves, and First Source then we said it's probably better handled by somebody else, because as a bank that became a constraint for us. But the original idea was we can't build scale in these businesses, so let's serve the world and then set this company up.
No, and thank you so much for setting that up, sir. I think it's
you
been a
guys
good
have done
story for us.
Brilliant job with it.
Thank you. So, sir, in this fast-paced world of innovations, disruptions are everywhere. So what is your take on cryptos as a currency and an asset class? And what role do you envision for emerging technologies like blockchain, AI?
Yeah, I will separate the two. So crypto, as I say, is, and this is again, I think almost everybody that I know has had the same refrain. As a banker, I'm very nervous about anything which doesn't have what we call an underlying. So there's nothing underlying this, so I don't want to venture into, so it becomes a glossy stone maybe, which, or a dull stone on which you are speculating. So anyway, as of now, that's not something I would like to spend time on. But blockchain, the underlying technology, I think has a lot of uses. Though I must say that what we thought of when crypto took off 3-4 years back, things riding on blockchain have not taken off at the same pace. We thought of. We'll wait and see. AI is a different, I would say, equation, I would put it, because there, I think the application that are coming, or the end use that are coming out of it, are enormous. And my view is that it's not going to be a sudden moment where, oh, AI is on us. It's going to be part of everything that we do, and it's going to be integrated into the business that we do, and that's how we will continue. Like one fine day, maybe people started using machines. Those machines, changed the way they did things, and then it became computers. Computers changed the way you did things. I think AI is going to pervade into whatever you do, and you will have a time. It won't be a sudden disruption one fine day.
Absolutely, sir. So in 2015, you took on a new challenge as the first ever president of the New Development Bank, also known as the BRICS Bank, which was a big transition from a global perspective. So, sir, what were some of the challenges you faced at that time, and how did you overcome them?
Well, the actual challenge was a challenge of the mind. Doing that job, I don't think I was really worried about. It's a development bank, and my first 25 years were in development banks. The biggest constraint is constraint of my mind, but it didn't take me too long to resolve it, and that is, I was 68 when I was asked whether I would go to Shanghai and reside there for 5 years and set this bank up, virtually with no staff. And I can say on virtually day one with no capital. So we had to manage 6 months without capital, build a team and so on. But it was fun because you had 5 countries coming together and you worked with them. The challenge in setting up that bank was, to me, is not financial. It was basically but working with 5 different cultures. You had China, you had Brazil, you had Russia, and you had South Africa. Each one has a different approach to doing things. So how do you make it happen? So it was more an exercise, I would say, in diplomacy than an exercise in banking. Banking was there, but it was a diplomatic exercise rather than a banking exercise per se.
And any 1 or 2 tips from that experience in diplomacy that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, I think let me share something else that I saw in China. I would suggest whoever has not been to China to take a look at China, because that's what we will become in the next 15 years. I think things will go right, that's no question at all. I've seen Shanghai from 1988 onwards. So my first trip was in 88 when I was with the Asian Development Bank, and I've been thereafter going every 2 years. But the transformation in, say, the period 2005 to 2015 is nothing short of magical. So what I learned in this context is that there can be dramatic change in a very short period of time if you go about it right. And we can then analyze what are those things that we need to do right. And you end up having a modern city, probably the most modern in the world. And you have rural spaces which are developing, infrastructure which is connected, and so on. Of course, hindsight now, 5-7 years later, and this was actually clear to me even by, say, 2018 or so, that there is a debt crisis that is not come to the surface, and will come to the surface. So it has come to the surface now. So in growth, in the growth equation, we will have to keep in mind that you could have a challenge with a debt crisis, not the debt that individuals have borrowed, but the debt that has gone into certain growth initiatives, which either takes a very long time to repay, or is unproductive, and so on. So that needs to be addressed as a good learning, so that you avoid the mistakes, but look at what is the end game and go on.
Thank you, sir. So, sir, we live in uncertain times in the midst of wars, supply chain disruptions, looming economic slowdown in many parts of the world. So, what do you think is in store for the Indian economy?
What is in store for us? I think let me put the growth equation into simple perspective. Growth happens when there's a long runway. And you look at India, any which way you look at it, there's a long runway. Let's start with a very simple thing. Let's take infrastructure. Let's take roads. Let's take railways. And let's take power. Just 3 key. Then you can put airports and other things as you go along, seaports and so on. We are short on all these things. So there is at least a 10 to 15 year runway to build this, which creates economic, rather rapid economic development. Because infrastructure is a very interesting category of investment, which during the process you are investing in infrastructure, growth happens. So this is during the incubating stage. And thereafter, once the infrastructure has been laid on the ground, economic benefits of that, the dividends from that infrastructure start happening. So there's a very long runway for infrastructure in terms of what it provides. And the second is, look at the other extreme, urban rejuvenation. You look at the third extreme, rural modernization, homes that need to be built for people. So you have a vast spectrum of things. And as I said, the China example has taught us maybe what not to do. At some point in time, probably the mistake there was to keep the 10% plus growth going. Your economic deployment of capital, that is for investment, for say infrastructure and other things, became less and less productive. So what, in the case of Japan earlier, we used to jokingly say, you try to keep growth going by building bridges to nowhere. So you build a bridge from here to another island, but that island is not habited. So you are building a bridge to nowhere, but you are building it because to that building phase, you have utilized a whole lot of things and there is some growth. But after that, it becomes a dead burden. So we are quite a distance away from that, maybe 15 to 10% distance away. Maybe one lesson is not to grow too high into double digits. Grow at the 7-8% that we are, And then, of course, you have got inflation to account for that. So I would think that there are lessons that have been learned which can be internalized and we could put it to good use.
And so, any red flags that you think we should watch out for?
See, any country needs to look out for red flags, and today the events of last 2-3 years have shown red flags are plenty. Say, war created situation in Europe and the further west, the inflationary cycle, then rate increases which lagged that cycle, you're still paying for that, and so on. But in our case, not following, I would say, a path which you use all your learnings is the only risk that we have. Otherwise, we are on a great path for a long period of time. And I think we should reach the aspirations that we have set without much hassle if we keep to this path.
And so, because of the global economic uncertainty, despite India performing extremely well, what do you think are some of the things entrepreneurs today should keep in mind as they are building businesses? Because today they may be Indian, but tomorrow they would obviously have a global aspiration.
Yeah, I think the two things that I would think come to mind. One is India is the opportunity set. So concentrate on that Indian opportunity. There will be constraints, but if you think there are no constraints if you go out, you would be wrong. There are constraints everywhere that you go. So one is look at India as your primary focal area. I don't think you would find any better opportunity anywhere else in the world at this point of time. Second is look for trends. You earlier on said looking for trends. You need to look at trends as you go along. What are the dots out there, and how do I connect those dots? Are there any pointers? Can I pull them into what I'm doing? And this never ends. Even today, that will go on in terms of what is happening around you.
And so today, a lot is being said about overvalued stocks in the stock market. Further, we see heavily loss-making companies or companies with minimal revenue having, over the roof kind of valuations. So is there a bubble building?
We have to separate two things, the two things that you said. One is companies with thin balance sheets, with no top line, no bottom line, or maybe some top line but no bottom line, and so on. There, I think the thing is very simple. Buyer, be aware, or beware. Be aware or beware. I don't think there's any other thing that you can apply to these companies. Now, we take the other set of companies. You may say that, is the PE of 22 too high? You may quibble about should the PE be 19 or 22. Okay, you are bought at 22. It will even out over a period of time. I don't think these things really matter in the long run. But if you are punting, then you probably are again into the buyer be aware or buyer beware category. So I would not concentrate too much on the stock market valuations. I would look at underlying growth and what that growth does to you. And is that growth going to sustain this company that you want to invest in? This would be the equation that I would look at.
Okay, absolutely. And I think be aware and beware, I think, are very interesting mantras. So thank you for that. Sticking to the capital markets, they are at an all-time high. So as an entrepreneur, it is very tempting to raise capital at this point in time. So my question is, should one raise capital when you actually don't even require it, but external circumstances will allow you to raise it well, or should you not?
Answer is unequivocal yes.
Okay.
I've done that all, my career. So the first capital raise we did was 1988 or 89. That time I needed capital. And the Indian stock markets were, in a comatose state. So we said we will list in the US market. My investment banker said it's going to take 3 years. And then I want to do it in 3 months. And we did it in 84 days. So you did that. But segue to 2006-7, I didn't need capital at all. So, but conditions were right, stock was right. So we did a 4 billion raise. That's now in history. When the rupee was at, 40 rupees or so at that point in time. I know it was 5 billion, not 4 billion. So we raised 20,000 crores at that point in time. We didn't need capital then, even through the Lehman crisis, even through the COVID crisis. I don't think the bank needed capital. So if you find an opportunity, you should raise capital. As a CEO, of course, you will not take shareholders' interest into account. But having that cushion is always good.
Absolutely. And so as entrepreneurs, one more word of advice, just a question, is should one take debt to grow or not? And if so, why and how much? And if not, why not?
See, I remember my professor from business school, going back 50 years, 54 years. His advice was very simple, that debt is a double-edged sword. Well, the going is good, but then when the going is not good, you fall on the sharp side of... So to me, that mantra is there. And again, you're all a younger lot, but most industrialists in India grew through a time when there was a mantra or an equation. Equity 1, debt 2. That was the mantra on which all businesses got built up to the mid-90s. And then everything changed. Now, going was good, it worked. Going, slight problems, you fell on that too. The debt basically meant that you had a challenge with the company. So I would think on the debt equity front today, in today's world, definitely you should be very cautious in taking debt, and equity should be your primary focus.
So, sir, what is important for a young entrepreneur to follow through with an idea that he thinks will work, but is completely different to what others have done, or to take a safe path of repeating something that you know has been successful and has been done already?
I would think that's the best situation to be in, which he knows something, he knows that it's going to be right. There is risk. As earlier on, the earlier panel was saying, there's always risk. So I think that's the best situation to be in. You identify opportunity, others are not identifying opportunity. Yes, there is risk, but that's the path to take.
And so hundreds of people would have asked you, what is your advice for the youth of the country? And your pearls of wisdom have reached many, many places and many, many minds. But I want to ask you one thing. If there's one thing that the youth of today needs to focus on in their entrepreneurial pursuit, what would that be?
I would think single-minded focus on the fact that there is opportunity. And again, there are so many things that are happening simultaneously out there. So I go back to that, I'm oft repeated, I would say, look for those dots out there and try to connect them. And you will find your star very clearly, which is your own business. And or the business you build. So wish everybody great success on that path.
Thank you so much, sir. As we are nearing the close of this session, a few quick, fun questions to bring this to an end. So, sir, one success after another, innumerable feathers in your cap, numerous awards, the Padma Bhushan. What do you account this success to?
Yeah, I don't actually look at that. It may be, you may say, oh, this is a cliche. But to me, the technology that we use in ICICI Bank to actually create a banking system which was completely different for the nation probably is what I remember in my mind. Not that I should be remembered for that, but I remember in my mind because a lot of other people have done probably better things. In fact, today's fintech world, I think there are players there who have built much better things than what we would have created. But for me, that remains in my mind.
And so moving on to some of your passions, I believe you enjoy reading a fair bit. So the last book that you read?
Yeah, see, I don't read too often. I take ideas from books. But the last book that I took, which I read and took, I would have read many, is Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow. It is slightly old now. I'm saying that book because that changed the way I looked at things. And behavior as something which is integral to doing business. So the behavioral part of business, from that point on, came into everything that I did. And that, in a way, I think, probably helped me become a better person. And when I read that book, I thought if I had read this book when my children were growing up, maybe I would have been a better father. So the message probably to me was that try to read as much as you can in areas not related to what you do.
So you also have a passion for old Hindi songs. So if you had to pick one of the following, which one? Lata Mangeshkar, Kishore Kumar, Pandit Jasraj?
Mukesh.
Okay, clear. talking of children, sir, if you had to pick one industry for your grandchildren where you'd think you'd want them to be working in when they grow up, which one would it be?
I would think that they should work in a business where, or an industry where things change so fast, and the childlike excitement of doing something different endures through your life. In fact, if I look back, that's what gave me fun from 96, 97 onwards to date. It's like doing something new every day. When I go to office, I'm like a kid with toys. Maybe you laugh at that, but that's how I feel. That there is something different happening.
Sachin, Dhoni, Rohit, Virat, your favorite cricketer?
I think Dhoni was a great leader, so I would pick him.
And if there's something from his journey that you think would be all of us as entrepreneurs should look at, what would that be?
Grit. Yeah, this grit, I think, stands out very clearly.
And last question, sir. I read in one of your older interviews that you have a passion for fast racing and for Formula One. So what's the one lesson that you may have absorbed from there and applied to business?
So I used to say this actually to the team at ICSA long back. Racing teaches you one thing: how to drive at speed, but within limits. So how do you take that corner? What is the art, the science, and your skill, all three together, that allows you to take that corner at the highest possible speed, but not get into a crash or not skid out of the race. I think that if you can master. And another lesson from Formula One is the speed at which the pit stop happens. So basically the tires are changed in 2.5 seconds. The entire pit stop, from driving into the pit where there's a speed limiter to getting out of the pit, 21 or 22 seconds. Of which the actual working on the car is 2.5 seconds. If we can imagine we get that into our businesses, I think we can build a completely different sort of business.
Absolutely. So as we draw this session to a close, what can I say? Insightful, stimulating, thought-provoking, engaging, to say the least. So, thank you so much for this absolute candid and enriching fireside chat. You've been an inspiration to all of us in this room, and your visionary leadership is one that all of us must learn from. Thank you once again.
Thank you, and all good wishes to all the people here.
Thank you for that very insightful chat. In fact, all of us can learn from Mr. Kamath on how to look back with nostalgia and look ahead with excitement. I would request Mr. Kamath to please stay on stage, sir. We'll get the awards juggernaut rolling, and we request you to please present the awards. And I would like to invite on stage Mr. Rajiv Dubey, if he could also join Mr. Kamath to present the awards, and we will start with the events juggernaut right now. There is just one request from all of you. Taaliyan band nahi honi chahiye. All of these winners deserve all the recognition they are getting, and they're your peers, so please encourage them as much as you can. So we're going to start in alphabetical order. The first award of the day goes to Abhinav Shashank of InnoVacker, who offers data analytics and activation tools for the healthcare innovation industry. Congratulations to Abhinav. Our next winner is making a name for India in the so far unexplored drone industry. It is Agnishwar Jayaprakash of Garuda Aerospace. We have Faiza Kapoor and Ayushi Setla from his team here to receive the award on his behalf. He had to take an urgent flight and couldn't make it. But thank you to these lovely ladies for accepting the awards on his behalf. The next award of the day goes to Abhirup Medkar and Saurav Swaroop of Velocity. We have Abhirup here to receive the award, so please give a huge round of applause to our winner, Abhirup Swaroop of Velocity. Congratulations. Our next winner is Abhishek Chakrabarti of DTDC Express, who has given a new twist to logistics with tech savvy. Please put your hands together and welcome him on stage, and please continue with the applause. All this age well deserved. The next winner is Anand Piramal. We have Mihir Mukherjee from the Piramal Group here to receive the award on his behalf. I would request Mr. Kamath and Mr. Dubey to just step a little ahead, so there are few more awards to be given. The next winner ensures that you can have a hearty meal wherever you are. Please welcome Ankush Grover of Rebel Foods, some of whose brands include Behrouz Biryani, Fasus and Avan Story. Congratulations to Ankush. Our next winner works in the clean energy space. Yes, Anmol Singh Jackie is here from Gensol Engineering, who forayed into carbon trading when he was in his final semester in college. Congratulations, Anmol. Our next winner is Arjun Juneja of Mankind Pharma, India's fourth largest pharmaceutical company in terms of domestic sales. Please give a huge round of applause to Arjun Juneja. The next winner is Deepak Dara of Ontario Teachers Pension Plan that has brought Canadian funding across the PE and infrastructure space. Our next winner is Devansh Jain, Executive Director, Inox GFL Group, which is one of India's biggest manufacturers of wind turbines and generators, as well as specialty renewable energy forms such as chemicals and fluoropolymers. Can I request Shashwat Goenka to receive the award on his behalf? Our next winner is Harshad Reddy from Apollo Hospitals. We have Mr. Arunesh Punetha, CEO, Western Region Apollo Hospitals here to receive the award on his behalf. Please give a round of applause to our winner, Harshad Reddy. Our next winner is a banker. Please put your hands together for Jay Kotak of Kotak 811, who has brought new energy to digital banking. The next winner runs India's largest sports operation. Yes, it is Karan Adani, the MD of Adani Ports and SEC. We have Hari Krishnan Sundaram, Head Container Business, Adani Ports and SEC here to receive the award on his behalf. The next winner is Mehul Agarwal of Cars24, India's largest used car platform. We have Pooja Somani here to receive the award on his behalf. Our next winner is Namit Jain, who changed the market for people who used cars via rupee. Please give a round of applause to Namit Jain, our next winner. Please congratulate with a round of applause our next winners, Nibrant Shah and Dhiman Shah of Isprava, who have provided a boost to luxury homes in Goa, Kunur and Alibag. Please welcome Nibrant Shah and Dhiman Shah of Isprava. Okay, I think they are perhaps stuck in traffic. We'll give them some time to arrive. Our next winners are Pranav Bajaj and Ravjot Arora of Medulance Healthcare, who ensure ambulance services are readily available on call. Congratulations to Pranav and Ravjot. Our next winners are Pulkit Khurana and Siddharth Sikka of Battery Smart, who have made swappable batteries possible. We have Tarun Gaur here to receive the award on their behalf. Our next winners are working closely to provide waste management solutions that has emerged as a problem in most cities. Please put your hands together for Rahul Nenani and Gurashish Singh Sahni of RE Circle. Our next winner is from a totally different business. It's all about legal affairs. Please put your hands together for Rishabh Shroff, who heads the international business development of corporate law firm Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas. The next winners, Rohit Bhatt and Suraj Subramanian of investment management firm Airpath Capital Invest. It's a listed internet and technology-enabled business in consumer, financial services and pharmaceutical sector. Please give a round of applause to Rohit and Suraj. Congratulations to Rohit and Suraj. Our next winner is Shashwat Goenka, who brings dynamism to legacy businesses by foraying into new age consumer industries and investing at RP Sanjeev Goenka Group. Please put your hands together for Shashwat Goenka. Our next winner is Sudarshan Venu of TVS Motor Co., India's second largest electric two-wheeler manufacturer. We have Kamlesh Sharma to receive the award on Sudarshan's behalf. Our next winners, Sumit Gupta and Neeraj Khandelwal, have set up India's biggest crypto investment app, CoinDCX. Please welcome Sumit and Neeraj. Congratulations. Our next winner is from the renewable energy space. Please welcome Tanya Singhal, who founded the renewable energy platform Solar Arise and started MyN0 Carbon, a tech platform focusing on increasing climate consciousness using AI. The next winner, Tarun Saini, is an online educator. His company, Vidyakul Learning, provides online education to rural children. So please put your hands together for Tarun Saini. Our next winner is Udita Bansal from True Browns, who has carved out a space in ethnic apparel business. Please welcome Udita Bansal. Our next winner is Yogesh Chaudhary from Jaipur Rugs, who rebuilt the business from the brink of collapse and now sells his products to some of the world's high-end brands. Please welcome Yogesh Chaudhary. Congratulations. The next winner is none other than Ananya Birla, who provides micro loans to women entrepreneurs in rural India. Please welcome Ananya Birla. Our last award for the evening is being presented to somebody who's from the sports industry. It's Deepak Chahar of JCDC Sports. Since he is traveling, we have Deepak's sister, Malti Chahar, to receive the award on his behalf. I would now request all the winners of the evening today to please come up on stage with their trophies for a group photograph with Mr. Kamath. I request all the winners to please come up on stage as soon as possible so that we can have a really nice group photograph. And all those who have been watching the proceedings very closely, please take some photographs and post it on social media. Use the hashtag FortuneIndia40under40 while posting your pictures online or anything that you've liked about the conference. You can post it online. Do remember to tag us. Now that all the winners are on stage and working hard to squeeze in, please give them a huge round of applause. Thank you and congratulations to all the winners. I would request Mr. Kamath, who's on stage, and Mr. Dubey to please unveil the latest issue of Fortune India. I request all of you to please settle down. And here is the latest edition of the Fortune India magazine. I would now like to request the Honorable 40 Under 40 jury member, Mr. Cyril Shroff and Mr. Aman Gupta to please join Mr. Kamath and Mr. Rajiv Dubey on stage to present the next, to please gather for a group photograph. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Kamath, for your time, for encouraging all the winners. Thank you so much. We would like to thank all our sponsors for their support for making the event Fortune India's 40 Under 40 a big success. We would like to thank Raymond, Air India Express, Acer, Johnny Walker, and IBS. We also want to thank Heal a Child Foundation, established in June 2010, which is dedicated to saving vulnerable children from preventable suffering due to financial constraints. Over 14 years, it has safeguarded 1,060 children, focusing primarily on newborns and preterm infants in need of intensive care. Heal a Child collaborates with hospitals across Hyderabad to identify critically ill children whose families cannot afford the necessary treatment. After a careful evaluation of each family's financial situation, the foundation directly settles the hospital bills, alleviating financial burden on the parents. Thank you to all of you. Thank you for being so participative and encouraging for all the winners today. It's been a wonderful evening here in Mumbai, seeing so many young leaders who are working to change the face of India and how it does business. Please join us for dinner and drinks.